As a bit of backstory, I'm an 18-year-old young lady from the UK. I was 16 at the time of this story, in spite of the fact that I got set up on a day's date, kind of, but we had seen photographs of each other through a common companion. This fellow we'll call Cameron, and he was 19. Cameron seemed like your normal fellow, perhaps a small bit into video recreations and anime stuff, but by and large nothing my companion told me approximately him appeared off in any way. Our mutual friend gave us each other's numbers, and we texted for a night, and after that chosen to meet at an adjacent Starbucks the following day, since we were both free. I never liked to meet modern individuals this before long, but I figured since Cameron knew my companion, it couldn't conceivably go off base how mixed up I was. Though I arrived somewhat early and requested my coffee, since I never liked guys to feel like they got to purchase for me, and I found a Situate confronting absinthe for our entryway, and I pulled out my book. I may be there for 15 minutes chilling out, and I get a content saying that he's here, so I'm like incredible. But all of a sudden I feel a nearness over my bear, and I turn my head marginally in affirmation. You must be here sometime recently. I indeed get the chance to squeak out a "hi, his lips hook onto my neck," and he begins sucking on my neck. Presently I do not like individuals touching my neck indeed at the finest of times. I'm exceptionally sensitive, and I get super awkward by people even going any place close my neck. The primary few times I had a need or hair medications, I had been holding in my distress, and he lashed onto my neck northeast like a siphon, and this man smells shocking, kind of like dust exemplified. I crack out, and I elbow his chest to urge him the hell off of me. He at that point lets go and looks at me with this odd expression on his confront and snickers in dead dish. I inquired him what the hell that was, and he fair said I thought it was charming. Charming in what world? I attempt to have a discussion like let's attempt to grant him another chance, but he's fair creepily gazing at my chest, and he says, "Wow, I didn't know Asians seem have boobs like those. I way better not let you go, and that's a coordinate site." I cannot make this up. I was feeling amazingly awkward, but I didn't need to fair run absent. He was giving me truly odd vibes, so I go to the ladies' lavatory, and I hold up for someone else to come in. I inquired her to assist me get out undetected, cause I didn't want this man taking after me domestic or a feud. She of course concurs, and she loans me her cap and scarf, and we come out of the washroom together, and she oversees to assist sneak me out the back entryway of the Starbucks, without him taking note me. He inquired my companion where I went, but I told my companion to never specify me once more. I was as well startled with him. I know I likely didn't carry on well, possibly I ought to have fair told him I was taking off, but I was truly fair frightened. I'm right now a senior in Toll School, and I live in a beautiful pleasant town in North Carolina. It all began a year prior when I was 16. At the time, I was working at Starbucks as a barista. It was Thursday, and shockingly, the cafe was nearly purge. A couple of minutes, sometime recently the conclusion of my move, one of my colleagues educated me that a charming fellow was here to see me. I was confounded since I didn't have a boyfriend at the time, and I'm beautiful normal looking, so I couldn't imagine that a fellow might be inquisitive about me. As I turned around, I recognized the boy instantly, Henry, my dad's best friend's child. He's 3 a long time more seasoned than me, and for a reason that I wasn't mindful of, he enjoyed making me feel hopeless with things like calling me fat and revolting, and a parcel of other sweet things that you just truly do not need to listen as an as of now insecure teenager. So, for self-evident reasons, seeing him at my work environment didn't fill me with delight. Presently, from a totally objective point of view, he was an awfully good-looking guy, blonde hair and blue eyes. But he knew that he was appealing, which made me need to punch his smile off his confront. Henry said he was really here to apologize for being a total douchebag, and confessed that he'd really truly enjoyed me, but didn't know how to act around me, since I emanate such a powerful energy that it was truly debilitating. His words, not mine. Being the idiotic young lady that I was, I acknowledged his statements of regret, and from that minute on, we kept in touch each day. He would send me great morning and great night writings and allow me charming nicknames, whatever couples do. However, he never inquired me to be his sweetheart. He would present himself to others as my one and genuine adorer. I ought to have seen the ruddy banners from the begin. He would appear up at my port without inquiring me at slightest once a week. I live alone with my father, who really likes the fellow, so my ancient man didn't care approximately his consistent nearness at domestic. After some months into our relationship, I'd chosen to call it off in spite of the fact that because he was being truly possessive. He was desirous of my lady friends, and I found that he was in contact with his past ex-girlfriend, that he kept on telling me not to stress approximately. His response wasn't what I anticipated. He shrugged and said, "Affirm anything you need, darling." Do not get me off base. I didn't need him to harm sensibly, but he seemed so impassive around this that it was nearly stressing. I thought the story would conclusion here, but I was off base. Indeed, after the breakup, he kept on coming over and taking rests on my bed, whereas I wasn't domestic. When I stood up to him approximately he would respond with, "I came to see your father," or "We're still companions. I do not see what's bothering you." Well, what's bothering me is that in the event that you weren't wearing an costly-ass cologne with a solid scent, I wouldn't know merely came into my room, whereas I was out within the to begin with put. So I attempted to tell my father that Henry and I weren't together any longer, that he had no right to come over and make himself at domestic in my possess room. But my father fair chuckled and said that I was being a show ruler. So I'm beyond any doubt you'll be able to get it why I'm kind of stuck at this point. What I didn't know was that Henry was fundamentally following me all over. I'd taken note it many weeks back, but I'm lovely beyond any doubt that it had been going on for quite a few times presently. He would follow my car as I was attending to school, or stop his truck within the Starbucks stopping part whenever I was working. He would look through my room window, and indeed take off handprints that I as it were saw after some time. I didn't take note until a couple of weeks back when my car had an issue with one of the tires, so I had to require the transport for a small wearers. One morning, as I strolled out of my house, I saw his truck and quickly made out his confront as he was sitting within the driver's situate. That's when I associated the dots. My intestine feeling going into a free for all at whatever point I was out, 3 of my tires being cut, and the handprints on my room window. When the realization hit me, a shudder ran down my spine. I felt paralyzed and tears fell down my confront. I felt sick and decided that I required a conversation around it to some person. I made up my intellect and told my companion Tyler, who's 5 a long time more seasoned than me and is considering law. I told him the complete story, and luckily he told me I couldn't do anything since I didn't have any concrete confirmation, and it would fair be my word against his. He's a damn great controller. Presently I'm stuck since I don't know what to do. I attempted to require pictures of his car, but due to the need of light in my neighbourhood, I never overseen to snap one in which we could recognise him. At whatever point he was stopped before my house, and we made eye contact, he as a rule began the truck and drove off. I haven't seen him in 3 days, but my intestine feeling is still making me go insane. I was working at a Panera bread eatery, and we had a bread bash, which is sort of an assembly for all the workers to upgrade the menu. I had a move that finished at 8, but I wrapped up everything up early, and I held up out within the campaign with my companion. It was a whereas until the assembly really started, so my companion and I'd chosen to go get coffee together at the closest Starbucks. So we get in and out of Starbucks pretty rapidly, and we begin strolling to my car when I take in note a man gazing at us from the another stopping part over. Considering of it, we take our time to induce within the car when I notice he begins running towards us. I tell my companion to rapidly get within the car, since we are both women, and we can't fair believe irregular men. I closed my entryway as he called up to us, locking it quickly. I assumed he didn't take note how quick we attempted to urge interior, or the car locking, so he thumped on my window indeed, in spite of the fact that I was as of now looking up at him. He at that point inquires me to roll down the window, but I movement to my ear and say uproariously sufficient that I can listen what he should say. He at that point inquires for a ride and focuses. Past the Starbucks to his right. Fortunately, I was telling the truth, and I educated him that we had an assembly at our work the inverse way. He tells me it'll fair be genuine speedy, but I say that we're running late, and he at long last backs off, but not without gazing me down to begin with. On the way back, my companion inquired me why I didn't fair let him in since our assembly didn't begin for another 20 minutes, but I fair essentially told her that I do not ever, and am not permitted to, and will never allow a ride to a stranger, and it close her up. Well, after the assembly was wrapped up, I recalled it takes 20 minutes to induce domestic. My car wouldn't make it back without getting gas. I stopped at pump number 7, and I got in cash to go interior. Once I'm interior, I snatch a pack of chips, sometime recently getting prepared to pay for gas. When I see up and make eye contact with somebody recognizable, it was that stranger who inquired for a ride. I know it's the same individual, since he was a thin white male that showed up to be any place from his late 20s to early 30s with chaotic brown hair and inconsistent whiskers. He moreover had on a loose brown hoodie together with loose pants. I feel my pulse speedier, and after seeing him exit the store, I pay for the gas and my things, and I stand around one or two of individuals as I peer exterior. The stranger was standing around my car for some strong minutes, sometime recently strolling absent. Once I saw no locate of him, I strolled out behind an awfully huge man and made my way towards the car. I'm $6 into pumping my gas so distant when I see over towards the building and see the stranger thrust off from the wall and start to walk over to me, flicking a cigarette amid the way. I swear gas has never pumped so gradually sometime recently in my life. I realized there was no way to speed up my gas, so I subtly put my keys between my knuckles as he stops sometime recently looks at me, to which I donate an awkward half smile. He at that point inquires me on the off chance that he knows me from some place, and I imagine to look at him as in the event that he was commonplace, but shake my head no. He at that point inquires for my title, to which I say the primary title that came to my head, Valerie. He at that point said something that made my skin slither. Well, Valerie, I ought to head over there, and you're the prettiest one here, so I was wondering if perhaps you'll grant me a ride. As he says this, he was indicating to his right once more, which made me ponder why he chosen to go indeed more distant from his wanted goal, and why he's not fair basically strolled there amid the full 2 hours since I final saw him. I told him my guardians required me domestic, since it was a school night, and it's as of now late, but he come to a handout for mine, which was presently gradually pulling out the pump, and I winced absent discernibly. It'll be genuine speedy. I fair require a ride to my companions. At this point, I accepted he hadn't recognized me from the experience at Starbucks, but I at that point told him once more that my guardians are anticipating me domestic any diminutive presently, and he huffs and puffs, sometime recently at last strolling off. I wrapped up with everything managing with my gas tank, and got interior my car where I bolted my entryways, and drove domestic on a distinctive course fare in case I was being taken after. I have never given a ride to a stranger, and I never will. I need to begin off by saying that everybody in this story is secure, but it was one of the closest calls I've ever had in my life, and I feel like I need to tell this story in a range to raise mindfulness. I live in a major city and essentially the pit of hell state, born and raised here. I'm exceptionally commonplace with my environment. I'm moreover mindful of the truth that my city is one of the most exceedingly bad centres for human trafficking. Living here can be very dangerous. In spite of all of this, I've taken pride in knowing that I do everything I can to remain as secure as conceivable. I've had near calls sometime recently, with one being a sheep proprietor who gave a stranger duplicates of my keys, and a man attempted to enter as before long as I was alone, and other stunning stories. I'm beautiful arranged in spite of the fact that at this time I had 2 things of pepper splash, one in my favourite coat stash, and one Velcro to my work area at work. I too had 2 trusty tape blades, which I continuously kept one on me, and one in my car entryway stash. Gracious, and my taser never clears out my back. I maintain a strategic distance from shady circumstances at all costs, and in spite of being a little woman, I know my stuff. But on to the story. It is summer and hot as hell out, so I've got a date with my best companion, and I swing by her put to choose her up. She tells me she contains a work meet to go to begin with, and I concur to go with her. No enormous bargain. She's a sweet, modest thing from a little town within the Midwest, and exceptionally unused to the city life and the wild things that can happen. Here as we drive into a diverse city, I inquire her approximately the work. It's a modelling gig, she says. Gracious, that's cool for who I inquired. I found an advertisement on Craigslist. It's fair sports dress. The Craigslist thing sets a little far off alert off in my head, but I thrust it to the side. Where the hell are we going besides? When we drag up to a Starbucks a bit exterior the city, the alert in my head gets to be a small less blackout. Unwind, I tell myself. I've gone to legit work interviews at coffee shops sometime recently, and there's continuously been a great reason. We arrived to begin with, late still, but conclusion up holding up approximately 15 minutes. Kind of abnormal, but Kat's calmed that we're not the inconsiderate ones when she gets a content from the fellow saying that he's here. I see around the Starbucks and exterior at the parking part, attempting to figure out who the mystery man may well be, when I notice a tall, well-dressed man step out of a dark SUV. He grins at us as he approaches, and I figured that he was our fellow. I may have sworn that the SUV had been stopped there for a whereas. I inquired Kat on the off chance that she needs me to step in line and snatch her a drink, but she essentially asks me to remain with her. Affirm I can do that. I didn't think you'd see exceptionally proficient, but I do not dissent. The man named Jack leads us to a disconnected table exterior, and doesn't say much, almost my nearness, other than that it was a firm for me to be there. I get on my phone and shoot a content to my life partner, clarifying where I was and what I was doing. He shoots a content back saying use caution, and I said beautiful to observe the appear. Jack had this bizarre compliment that I couldn't put my finger on. Looking back, I'm not indeed beyond any doubt it was genuine. He begins inquiring Kat the regular questions, and I take note she's completely bombarding the interview. She doesn't have much encounter and didn't bother to bring a portfolio, but in spite of this he doesn't appear to care. The caution in my head is much louder than a whisper, but it totally booms when he inquires on the off chance that she'd be comfortable doing underwear shoots as well. Expensive Sweet Cat says she doesn't have an issue with it, but would favour to do generally sports clothing like they had talked about prior. She inquired to see a few of his work, and he pulls up an Unmentionable's Instagram, all underwear, no clothing at all. He holds it before her come front and pulls it absent quickly, and when she inquires in case there would be more that she's doing, Jack goes that was it, and rushes the discussion along. He says that we have to go right presently to his studio at a put he briefly said the title of to sign papers, and get everything squared absent, which it must be done nowadays, that he wasn't working tomorrow and his co-workers won't do it. Right. I completely abhorred everything around this, and I'm attempting to glare a few cents into her, but nothing is getting through. Cat concurs, and he turns his attention to me. So do you need to be a portion of this as well? I quickly know that nothing approximately this can be proficient. I see down at my beat-up docks in green cargo pants, a shirt that has flares, and a somewhat tense symbol on it, and I can't offer assistance but murmur. That's not truly my thing, I'm fair the ride. He thinks about me for a moment, and after that says we are able all right with him coordinating his consideration to Cat. No, I do not need to take off my card. We'll take after you. He looks outraged that I bought in, and he inquires where we stopped. Right before the store. I drag Cat to the jeep and make beyond any doubt we walk behind him as before long as we get to the car. I bolt the doors and I try to keep from freaking out. We are not going. I said this doesn't feel right what around the underwear, but everything I say she has a pardon for. He pulls out of the stopping part and I follow Jack's SUV, but the entire time I'm attempting to figure out how to urge out of this. Cat doesn't like underwear, but this may be an entryway for her, and she frantically needs the cash. What on the off chance that it is legit? He was alone besides. You've got your cut and shower, right? She inquired. Of course I do, but I'm 5'2", and this man is 6'3", and Jack seem exceptionally much have companions where we're going, and I do not need to conceivably slaughter anybody or be murdered. At this point, I realize that Cat is batshit. We drive along as I conversation to her, and we begin driving out into the desert, the center of supreme no place. There's a divider within the street that anticipates U-turns, and I get a spooky feeling that Jack knew to require us this way. I'm completely frantic at this point. I drag out my phone and snap a picture of his SUV permit plate. I transferred it to Snapchat, where companions can see it. Cat begins getting uncomfortable once she realizes how distant we've driven. The title of the put he specified springs back into my head, and I know it's commonplace from someplace, a commercial jingle that's far off but catchy. It's a eatery or a lodging or something. He wouldn't have a studio there if you don't mind fair see it up. So she does, and it's a casino. Unless this man has leased out a space, he wouldn't have a studio there. It's not reliable with the data he gave us at all, so with us both freaking out at this point, I told her that this isn't exceptional, and he was attempting to befuddle us. The complete time all through the whole meet, she had a confounded and reluctant see on her confront, like this wasn't what she was guaranteed or anticipating at all. Cat at long last concurs that we ought to get out of there, and I begun to breathe simple once more. It was a harsh, speedy halt and turn around. Once turned around, we completely weapon it. She closes up getting a call from Jack, and to begin with look she disregards it, but I persuade her to call back, and she gets nothing at all, just like the number had blocked her. It didn't go through. I tell her to screenshot the Craigslist advertisement, but she can't discover it any place. It's like each follow of Jack vanished. We went back to her loft, and I told her that she has to report it. She guaranteed me that she will, but afterward chooses not to, since she doesn't need her spouse to know. He didn't indeed know she had this meat to start with, and she didn't need him to know what happened. On the off chance that I hadn't driven her, she would have gone alone without telling a soul, and who knows what could have happened. I attempted not to chasten her as well severely, but I fair reminded her that our city was distinctive and much more unsafe than where she's from. So, sweet cat, I trust you are a little bit more alert to the world, and I'm too bad for that. It's been some months since we part ways, and I'm still stressed to death over all the careless, insane things simply get into. I'm nearly 4 months pregnant presently, and at last prepared to induce out of this damn perilous city. But besides, if it's not too much trouble individuals be secure out there, it's such an insane world, and be damned cautious with Craigslist particularly. Thank you for watching the video. Make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Midnight Mysteria, for more amazing horror stories.